deep beneath the golden capital of Leyndell, where even the bravest Tarnished fear to tread, there exists a door that should never be opened. Behind it waits something that has haunted the darkest corners of the lands between since time immemorial. A burned, twisted hand of 3 gnarled fingers smoldering with yellow chaos flame. This is no ordinary appendage, but a fragment of something far more ancient, far more terrible. It represents 1/2 of a cosmic schism that defines everything we know about Elden Ring's world, a division so fundamental that it shapes the very nature of existence itself. Welcome, lore seekers, to another deep exploration with Keen 7 Lore, where today we're venturing into one of the most profound and disturbing conflicts in all of gaming mythology, the eternal opposition between the 2 fingers and the 3 fingers. This isn't merely a story about competing factions or warring gods. This is about the fundamental question that has plagued philosophers since the dawn of thought. Should existence remain fractured into countless individual souls, each suffering in their isolated consciousness, or should everything melt back into the primordial unity from which it came? Picture, if you will, a perfect hand, 5 fingers working in harmonious unity. Now imagine that hand torn asunder, split between order and chaos, with 2 fingers grasping desperately at structure and control, while 3 fingers burn with the desire to reduce everything back to ash and oneness. This grotesque division isn't just symbolic. In the lands between, these severed digits have become the physical manifestations of opposing cosmic forces, each seeking to reshape reality according to their incompatible visions. The 2 fingers, those pale, withered appendages we find throughout our journey, serve as emissaries of the greater will, that distant outer god whose golden radiance has shaped the current age. They sit in their divine towers, twitching with otherworldly knowledge, selecting Empyreans and guiding Tarnished toward their destiny as Elden Lord. They promise order, structure, and the continuation of the golden order that Queen Marika established. A world where souls remain distinct, where individuality persists, where the strong rise and the weak serve their ordained purposes. But there's another path, one that most dare not even whisper about. The 3 fingers offer something entirely different. Not order, but blessed chaos. Not continuation, but culmination. Not the preservation of souls, but their complete and utter dissolution back into the primordial flame from which all things emerged. They promise an end to suffering, not through healing or redemption, but through the complete annihilation of everything that makes suffering possible. No more individual consciousness to feel pain, no more separation to cause longing, no more existence as we'll understand it. Only the return to the one great, that original unity before the cosmos made its first terrible mistake of dividing itself. To understand this conflict, we must journey back to the very beginning, to a time before time, when all that exists now was contained within a single, undifferentiated whole. The being or force known as the One Great contained everything, every soul that would ever be, every thought that would ever emerge, every particle of matter and spirit compressed into absolute unity. In this state, there was no suffering, because there was no consciousness to experience it. There was no joy either, no love, no hatred, no experience at all, just pure, undifferentiated existence. Then came the great fracturing. According to Hyetta, that mysterious woman who serves as prophet for the 3 fingers, everything changed when the One Great split apart. All that there is came from the One Great, she tells us in hushed, reverent tones as we guide her through her dark pilgrimage. Then came fractures and births and souls. This wasn't creation in the traditional sense. It was division, separation, the breaking apart of perfect unity into countless fragments. From this original schism emerged what we now know as the Greater Will and the Frenzied Flame, though scholars believe these might have been the first and most fundamental division of all. The Greater Will embraced this separation, seeing in it the possibility for order, hierarchy, and meaning. It viewed the fracturing not as a mistake, but as an opportunity. A chance to create structured existence, where different beings could fulfill different roles, where consciousness could experience and grow, where souls could strive toward greater purposes. The two fingers became its instruments in the physical world, particularly in the lands between, establishing systems of power and maintaining the boundaries between entities. But the force that would become the frenzied flame saw things very differently. To it, the fracturing was the original sin, the primal mistake that created all suffering. Every moment of pain, every tear shed, every scream of anguish that has ever echoed through existence, all of it stems from that first division. But the greater will made a mistake, Hayata continues, her words carrying the weight of cosmic horror. Torment, despair, affliction, every sin, every curse, every one born of the mistake. This philosophical divide runs deeper than mere disagreement about cosmic origins. It represents two fundamentally incompatible views of what existence should be. The greater will, through its two fingers, seeks to maintain and refine the separated world, creating ever more complex hierarchies and systems of order. It sees beauty in diversity, purpose in struggle, meaning in the journey of individual souls toward their destinies. Even suffering has its place in this worldview. It teaches, it strengthens, it provides contrast that makes joy possible. The frenzied flame manifested through the three fingers rejects all of this entirely. It sees the separated world as an abomination, a cosmic wound that bleeds suffering into existence with every passing moment. Every individual consciousness is a fragment screaming in isolation, cut off from the wholeness it once knew. The solution isn't to ease this suffering or make it meaningful. The solution is to end the very possibility of suffering by melting everything back together. And so, what was borrowed must be returned, Hieta intones with terrible certainty. Melted all away with the yellow chaos flame until all is one again. The manifestation of these cosmic forces as fingers specifically is no accident. Fingers are tools of interaction, of grasping and shaping, of communication and creation. The fact that they appear as dismembered digits speaks to their nature as fragments of something once whole. The two fingers, with their paired nature, represent balance, partnership, the minimum needed for opposition and thus for choice. They can gesture, point, direct, all actions that require at least 2 points of reference. The three fingers, burned and twisted as they are, form a different kind of symbol. 3 is the number of instability in many mystical traditions, the number that breaks binary opposition and introduces chaos into ordered systems. If you're finding value in this exploration into the cosmic horror that underlies the lands between, consider subscribing to support the channel and join our growing community of lore enthusiasts. Your support truly makes these deep investigations possible, allowing us to uncover the darkest secrets and most profound mysteries together. Now, let's examine how these opposing forces actually manifest in the world of Elden Ring, starting with the two fingers and their role as architects of the current order. Throughout the lands between, we encounter these pale, elongated digits in various states of life and death. Some still twitch with divine purpose in their towers, while others lay mummified and forgotten, their connection to the greater will severed or dormant. Each Empyrean, those beings capable of ascending to godhood, has their own, two fingers to guide them, or at least they did before the shattering threw everything into chaos. The two fingers we encounter most directly resides in the Round Table Hold, that pocket dimension that serves as sanctuary for the Tarnished. Here, the ancient finger reader Enya interprets the twitching movements of these alien appendages, translating their otherworldly wisdom into guidance we can understand. But there's something deeply unsettling about this arrangement. The two fingers cannot speak directly to us. They require an intermediary, someone who has dedicated their life to understanding their cryptic movements. This communication barrier hints at just how alien the greater will truly is, how far removed from mortal understanding. What many don't realize is that the two fingers themselves are children of an even more mysterious entity, Meter, the mother of fingers. This cosmic being, eldest of the falling stars, serves as the first interpreter of the greater will's design, birthing the two fingers to serve as her offspring and extensions of divine will. But here's where things become truly disturbing. Scholars believe that Meta herself may have lost contact with the greater will long ago. The two fingers we encounter might be operating on outdated instructions, following protocols from an absent god, maintaining an order that no longer has active divine oversight. The responsibilities of the two fingers extend far beyond simple communication. They select empyreans from among the demigods, choosing those with the potential to become vessels for the outer gods. They grant shadow-bound beasts to these chosen ones, loyal companions and potential executioners should their empyrean stray from their destined path. Blade's tragic fate shows us the dark side of this gift, as his very nature compels him to turn against Ranni when she defies the Two Fingers' will. The Two Fingers also maintain the guidance of grace, those golden lights that direct the Tarnished toward their supposed destiny. But cracks appear in this seemingly divine system. When we present the Two Fingers with evidence of the Erdtree's rejection, when we show them that their promised path to becoming Elden Lord is blocked, they fall into catatonic silence. Enya tells us they must commune with the greater will directly, a process that will take thousands of years. This revelation exposes the fundamental dysfunction at the heart of the Golden Order. The system that Two Fingers maintain may be running on autopilot, following ancient programming, while the actual divine presence has long since withdrawn its active attention. The Two Fingers Order isn't necessarily benevolent either. It maintains strict hierarchies where some beings are born to rule while others exist only to serve. The persecution of those who live in death, the oppression of the omens, the exile of the Tarnished themselves until they were needed again. All of this flows from the Two Fingers' vision of proper order. They seek not justice or happiness, but stability, the continuation of established patterns regardless of who suffers in the process. Consider the fate of the merchants, those nomadic traders we encounter throughout our journey. According to the deeply buried lore, these people once lived as a great caravan, traveling the lands between in relative peace. But they were accused of heretical beliefs, of worshipping the flame of chaos. Whether this accusation was true or not became irrelevant. The forces of order buried them alive beneath Lendel, sealing them in the darkness of the shunning grounds. It was there, in their despair and rage at this injustice, that they called out to the only force that would listen. Their collective suffering summoned the Three Fingers into physical manifestation, their anguish giving form to chaos itself. The Three Fingers represents everything the Two Fingers opposes. Where the Two Fingers are pale and relatively pristine despite their age, the Three Fingers are charred and burning, forever smoldering with the yellow flame of frenzy. They don't reside in towers that reach toward the heavens, but in the deepest depths beneath the capital, behind a door that requires us to strip ourselves of everything: armor, weapons, clothing, all the trappings of civilization and order, before we can even approach them. This requirement for absolute nakedness isn't mere dramatic effect. It represents the Three Fingers' fundamental philosophy. All the constructs of separation must be abandoned. Clothing separates us from the world, armor separates us from harm, weapons separate us from our victims. To inherit the flame of frenzy, we must present ourselves as we truly are, naked, vulnerable, without any of the barriers that define individual existence. The philosophy of the frenzied flame extends far beyond simple destruction. It offers a twisted form of compassion, arguing that the only true mercy is to end the possibility of suffering entirely. When we trace the spread of madness through the lands between, we find it taking root primarily in places of great suffering and despair. The Frenzied Flame Village, where the entire population fell to madness, sits in Liurnia, where the endless wars between Caria and the Academy created generations of suffering. The flame spreads not through conquest but through despair, offering its terrible mercy to those who have lost all hope in the ordered world. Shabriri, the most reviled man in all history, became the first recorded host of the Frenzied Flame. His very name became synonymous with chaos and madness, to the point where simply invoking it could drive men to frenzy. But what crime did Shabriri commit to earn such universal hatred? The specifics are lost to time, but we know it involves slander so severe that he had his eyes gouged out as punishment. It was in this state of ultimate rejection and suffering that he became the perfect vessel for chaos, his empty sockets weeping the yellow flame of frenzy. The nature of Shabriri raises disturbing questions about identity and consciousness. We encounter him wearing the body of Yura, the samurai who aided us in our hunt for bloody fingers. But is this possession, or something more fundamental? Shabriri speaks of discarded flesh as if bodies are merely costumes to be worn and discarded. This casual disregard for individual identity perfectly embodies the Frenzied Flame's philosophy. If all will return to one, what does it matter which specific flesh carries the message? Then there's Vike, the Tarnished, who came closer than any other to becoming Elden Lord before our arrival. His story serves as both warning and tragedy, showing how even the strongest can fall to the temptation of chaos. Vike was beloved, powerful, and destined for greatness. But he was also in love with his finger maiden, and when he learned that kindling the forge of the giants would require a maiden's sacrifice, he sought another way. The Three Fingers offered him that alternative. They promised he could become Lord of Chaos without sacrificing his beloved, that he could remake the world without loss. But the Frenzied Flame's gifts always come with a price. Vike inherited the flame, but was imprisoned before he could fulfill his dark destiny, locked away in an Evergale where he remains to this day, forever burning with madness, having lost both his love and his sanity in the pursuit of a different path. The mechanics of inheriting the Frenzied Flame reveal much about its nature. Unlike the Two Fingers, which work through systems and intermediaries, the Three Fingers act directly and violently. When they embrace the naked Tarnished, they don't simply grant power, they literally burn their will into our flesh, scarring us with the mark of chaos that cannot be easily removed. The embrace is described in-game as agonizing, our character screaming as the Three Fingers clutch our body and sear their purpose into our very being. This violent directness contrasts sharply with how the Two Fingers operate, where they guide and suggest through grace, maintaining the illusion of choice. The Three Fingers simply impose their will through overwhelming force. Yet paradoxically, approaching them is entirely voluntary. No one is forced to strip naked and open that door. The Three Fingers wait patiently for those who choose chaos, for those who have seen enough of the ordered world's suffering to embrace its complete annihilation. The visual language of the Frenzied Flame throughout the game reinforces its nature as antithetical to order. The flame itself burns yellow, the color of madness and sickness, contrasting with the golden light of grace. When characters are afflicted with madness, their eyes weep yellow flame, as if their very souls are melting out through their sockets. The grab attacks of frenzied enemies show them trying to share their revelation directly, forcing others to see the terrible truth that drives them mad. Even the architecture associated with the Frenzied Flame tells a story. While the Two Fingers reside in towers that reach upward, attempting to bridge the gap between Earth and Cosmos, the Three Fingers dwell in the buried depths, in the places the Golden Order tried to forget. The Cathedral of the Forsaken, where they wait, is a massive chamber filled with the corpses of merchants, each still clutching the instruments they played in life. Music, that most ordered of arts, becomes a tool of chaos, as these corpses still emanate the maddening songs that help summon the Three Fingers into being. The philosophical implications of this conflict extend beyond simple order versus chaos. The Two Fingers and Three Fingers represent different answers to the problem of theodicy, the question of why suffering exists in a world created by divine forces. The Two Fingers' greater will accepts suffering as a necessary component of existence, something that gives meaning to joy and drives souls toward growth and transcendence. Suffering, in this view, serves a purpose in the grand order of things. The Three Fingers' Frenzied Flame rejects this entirely. It sees any justification of suffering as cosmic gaslighting, a rationalization of a fundamental error that should never have occurred. Why should souls suffer to grow? Why should consciousness exist separately just to experience pain? The Frenzied Flame solution is radical but consistent. If existence necessarily includes suffering, then existence itself is the problem that must be solved. This connects to real-world philosophical traditions in fascinating ways. The Frenzied Flames philosophy mirrors certain interpretations of Buddhism's first noble truth, that existence is suffering taken to an extreme conclusion. While Buddhism seeks to escape suffering through enlightenment and the cessation of desire, the Frenzied Flame seeks to end suffering by ending existence itself. It's a nihilistic interpretation of compassion, mercy through annihilation. The Greater Will's position, maintaining order despite suffering, echoes theodicies from various religious traditions that argue suffering serves greater purposes, building character, enabling free will, or contributing to some incomprehensible greater good. But Elden Ring doesn't let this position off easily. The game shows us repeatedly how the Golden Order's maintenance of hierarchy and structure creates immense suffering for those deemed outside its vision of proper order. The conflict between 2 and 3 fingers also explores the tension between collective and individual existence. The 2 fingers maintain a world of radical individuality, where each soul remains separate and distinct, pursuing its own destiny, even if that means isolation and suffering. The 3 fingers offer collective unity through dissolution, where all boundaries between self and other disappear forever. Neither option allows for genuine community. One fragments us into isolated individuals, the other melts us into undifferentiated oneness. Ayeta's journey serves as our primary window into understanding the Frenzied Flame's perspective. This mysterious woman appears seeking to become a finger maiden, but follows a much darker path. We guide her to consume the eyes of those who've glimpsed the flame of frenzy, each one granting her visions of the truth the 3 fingers represent. With each eye consumed, she moves closer to understanding and accepting the fundamental premise of chaos, that existence itself is the problem. What makes Yetta particularly interesting is her potential connection to Irina, the blind woman we meet in the Weeping Peninsula. They share the same voice, the same appearance, and Yetta appears only after Irina's death. Is she a vessel possessed by the will of chaos, similar to how Shabriri inhabits Yura's body? Or is she something else entirely, a manifestation of the Frenzied Flame's will given form through tragedy? The game never answers definitively, maintaining the ambiguity that makes this conflict so unsettling. When Hayeta finally reveals the truth about the One Great and the Greater Will's mistake, she does so with the fervor of a true believer. She doesn't see the Frenzied Flame as evil, but as the only compassionate response to a broken reality. Her final transformation, where she becomes a finger maiden specifically for the Lord of Chaos, represents a complete inversion of the normal order. Where typical finger maidens help Tarnished fulfill the 2 fingers' will, she enables the complete destruction of everything the 2 fingers built. The game presents us with multiple endings, but 2 stand in direct opposition. The default ending where we become Elden Lord and maintain the Golden Order, and the Lord of Frenzied Flame ending where we burn everything away. The imagery of these endings couldn't be more different. As Elden Lord, we sit on a throne, crowned and powerful but alone, maintaining the systems that perpetuate both glory and suffering. As Lord of Chaos, we become a living apocalypse, our head replaced with a writhing mass of flame as we burn the Erd Tree and everything else to ash. But even the Frenzied Flame ending raises questions. When everything returns to one, what actually remains? Is it truly the peaceful unity the 3 fingers promise? Or is it simply nothing, the same as if existence had never happened at all? The game doesn't show us what comes after the burning, leaving us to wonder whether the One Great can even exist again after having been divided, or whether the Frenzied Flame simply seeks oblivion disguised as reunification. Melina's reaction to our potential embrace of the Frenzied Flame provides crucial perspective. This mysterious maiden who guides us throughout our journey and offers to sacrifice herself to burn the Erd Tree becomes our sworn enemy if we accept the 3 fingers' embrace. She promises to deliver. Destined death to us, to kill us as many times as necessary to prevent the apocalypse we would bring. Her vehement opposition suggests she knows something about what the Frenzied Flame truly offers, not salvation but something far worse. The fact that Melina herself bears signs of burn marks, particularly visible around her sealed eye, hints at her own connection to flame and potentially to the conflict between order and chaos. Some scholars believe she might be connected to the gloam-eyed queen who once wielded destined death before Marika sealed it away. If true, this would make her opposition to the frenzied flame even more significant. She understands the power of death and flame, but recognizes the specific horror the three fingers represent. Miquella's needle emerges as perhaps the only true escape from this binary choice. Created by Miquella, the most brilliant of the Empyreans, this needle can suppress the influence of outer gods, including the frenzied flame. It represents a third option, not order, not chaos, but independence from both. The fact that it requires the defeat of Malenia and must be used in the arena of Dragon Lord Placidusax, outside the normal flow of time, suggests that escaping the Toy Tree Fingers conflict requires stepping outside the regular cosmos entirely. The existence of Miquella's needle raises fascinating questions about the nature of the conflict itself. If the influence of both the greater will and the frenzied flame can be suppressed or removed, are they truly fundamental forces or simply very powerful? Outer gods imposing their will on reality. The needle suggests that the binary choice between order and chaos might itself be a false dilemma, that other possibilities exist beyond what the fingers offer. The merchant's story deserves deeper examination, as they represent the human cost of this cosmic conflict. These people, whose only crime was existing outside the Golden Order's strict hierarchies, became the catalyst for the three fingers' physical manifestation. Their instruments still play their mournful songs in the depths, a haunting reminder that cosmic forces often manifest through very human suffering. The melody they play, which drives listeners to madness, might be understood as the sound of collective despair made audible, the harmonized screaming of souls pushed beyond their breaking point. The spread of madness through the lands between follows patterns that reveal the frenzied flame's methodology. It doesn't conquer through armies or conversion, but through despair. The flame takes root, where suffering has become unbearable, where the promises of order ring hollow. The rats that carry madness in the sewers, the villages that fell to frenzy, the isolated prophets who preach chaos, all emerge from places where the Golden Order either failed or actively created suffering. Even the gameplay mechanics reinforce the philosophical themes. Madness builds up like a disease, accumulating until it overwhelms the player in an instant of devastating damage. This mirrors how the frenzied flame's truth works. The revelation that existence is suffering builds slowly until it becomes undeniable, at which point the only logical response seems to be embracing chaos. The fact that focus and mental fortitude can resist madness suggests that maintaining individual consciousness requires constant effort against the entropic pull toward dissolution. The visual design of enemies affiliated with each force tells its own story. Servants of the two fingers tend towards symmetry and gold, their armor and weapons reflecting order and hierarchy. Those touched by the three fingers show signs of burning and melting, their forms becoming increasingly chaotic and fluid. The distinction extends to their combat styles. Two fingers adherents fight with discipline and technique, while the frenzied attack with wild abandon, caring nothing for their own preservation. The game also explores how different characters respond to knowledge of this conflict. Some, like Ver, reject the two fingers, but don't embrace the three, instead serving other outer gods like the Formless Mother. Others, like Rani, seek to escape the influence of all outer gods entirely, pursuing an age of stars where the cosmic forces remain distant from the world. These varied responses suggest that the Tor Three Fingers conflict, while fundamental, isn't the only dynamic shaping the lands between. The law of regression and law of causality, discovered by the fundamentalist Golden Order scholars, provide another lens through which to understand this conflict. Regression pulls things backward toward their origins, while causality pushes them forward through chains of cause and effect. The frenzied flame represents regression taken to its ultimate extreme, pulling everything back to the original One Great. The greater will embodies causality, accepting that actions have consequences, and that the fracturing, once begun, must play out to its conclusion. Brother Corhin in Goldmask's questline offers yet another perspective on this conflict. Goldmask, the ever-brilliant fundamentalist, discovers a flaw in the Golden Order itself, the fickleness of gods like Marika, who can act according to their own will rather than pure order. His ending, the Age of Order, attempts to perfect the two-finger system by removing the possibility of divine caprice. This represents an attempt to save order from its own contradictions, to create a system so perfect that suffering becomes mathematically impossible rather than simply accepted. The role of the Tarnished in this cosmic drama is particularly interesting. We begin as pawns of the two fingers, following grace toward our destiny as Elden Lord. But unique among all beings in the lands between, we have the capacity to choose between order and chaos, to embrace the three fingers despite the two fingers' guidance. This freedom of choice might be the most terrifying aspect of our character. We can consciously choose apocalypse, something even the demigods seem incapable of doing. The endings available to us represent different resolutions to the fingers conflict. Beyond the stark binary of Golden Order versus Frenzied Flame, we can pursue Rani's Age of Stars, Fia's Age of the Duskborn, or the variations of order offered by Goldmask and others. Each represents a different answer to the question posed by the two and three fingers. How should conscious beings exist, if at all? As we near the conclusion of this exploration, it's worth considering what this conflict reveals about the nature of Elden Ring's world and perhaps our own. The game presents us with a universe where suffering is indeed inherent to existence, where the very act of consciousness existing separately creates the possibility for pain. The two fingers ask us to accept this and find meaning despite it. The three fingers offer to end it entirely. Neither provides what we might actually want: existence without suffering, unity without dissolution, order without oppression. The true horror of the fingers conflict lies not in either option being obviously wrong, but in both being partially right. The two fingers correctly identify that meaning and beauty can emerge from struggle and separation. The three fingers correctly identify that separation inevitably creates suffering that no amount of meaning can fully justify. We're left to choose between imperfect options, to decide what we value more: the possibility of joy despite suffering, or the cessation of suffering through the cessation of everything. This connects to deeper themes about the nature of video games themselves. Games, by definition, require conflict, struggle, and the possibility of failure. A game without challenge isn't really a game at all. In this sense, we as players are aligned with the two fingers every time we choose to play. We accept struggle and potential frustration for the sake of meaning and achievement. The three fingers solution would be to simply turn off the game forever, ending all possibility of failure by ending all possibility of play. Throughout the lands between, we find evidence of those who've grappled with this choice before us. The ancient dragons who existed before the current age seem to have found their own balance between order and chaos. The primordial crucible, that state where all life was blended together before being separated into distinct forms, represents yet another interpretation of unity versus separation. These precedents suggest that the three fingers conflict might be just the latest iteration of an eternal cosmic debate. The game's lore implies that similar conflicts have played out across different worlds and ages. The Greater Will and Frenzied Flame might have competed for influence in lands beyond the fog, each offering their vision of how existence should be structured. The lands between becomes just one battlefield in an endless war between fundamental principles, with mortal beings caught in the crossfire of cosmic philosophy. As we stand at the crossroads of this decision, whether to maintain order or embrace chaos, we might find that the most profound choice is to reject the choice itself. Miquella's needle, Rani's ambitions, and the various other endings suggest that the binary presented by the fingers might be a false one. Perhaps the true path forward involves neither accepting the suffering inherent in separation nor escaping it through dissolution, but finding new ways to exist that transcend this ancient conflict. The eternal struggle between the two fingers and three fingers ultimately asks us to confront the most basic questions of existence. Is consciousness worth the suffering it enables? Is order worth the oppression it requires? Is unity worth the loss of individuality it demands? These aren't questions with easy answers, which is precisely what makes this conflict so compelling and disturbing. In the end, the war between two and three fingers reveals the genius of Elden Ring's narrative design. It doesn't simply present us with good versus evil, or even order versus chaos in simple terms. Instead, it forces us to grapple with fundamental philosophical problems that have no clear solutions, where every choice carries profound consequences, and where even inaction is itself a choice. The fingers, in all their alien horror, become mirrors reflecting our own struggles with meaning, suffering, and the nature of existence itself. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into one of gaming's most profound philosophical conflicts. The opposition between the two fingers and three fingers touches on questions that extend far beyond the lands between, challenging us to consider what we truly value in existence and what prices we're willing to pay for those values. Whether you see the greater will's order as necessary structure or oppressive hierarchy, whether you view the frenzied flame's unity as merciful release or nihilistic destruction, this conflict forces us to examine our own beliefs about consciousness, suffering, and the meaning we create in an imperfect world. If you've enjoyed this exploration into the cosmic horror and philosophical depth of Elden Ring's lore, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support enables these investigations into gaming's deepest mysteries and most challenging themes. Join our community of lore seekers as we continue to uncover the hidden truths buried within the worlds we explore. Until next time, remember that in the lands between, as in life itself, the most terrifying choices are often those where both options contain their own terrible wisdom. May you find your own path between order and chaos, and may the flames, golden or otherwise, guide you to the destiny you choose for yourself.